Our next story is titled, I Never Heard My Grandma Swear Before Until Now. Ever since my grandpa died, my older brother and I took turns taking care of our grandma to the grocery store every week to do her shopping. Grandma cannot drive due to medical reasons, so one of us would take her down and help her with her shopping. During the height of COVID, we would go to her house and help her do online shopping and come back the next day to help her carry the bags in front of the porch and put stuff away. Grandma was the sweetest person I know. I once said in front of her when she asked me about a game that I went to the night before, and I said, "Oh yeah, the team sucked." And she went pale and gave me a long lecture about how young ladies don't say sucks. So one day we were on our grocery trip when Grandma had to use the restroom. She walked off and I stood by the cart waiting for her. Then out of nowhere, a Karen came up to me and said, "Now that the old lady's gone, I need some help." I said, "Oh, sorry, that's my grandma and she just stepped away for a moment. I think you can get help in the front." The Karen said, "I don't care. You need to help me now. I'm going to go all the way up front when you're here right now." I replied, "I'm sorry, but I don't work here. And I'm sure there's someone up front that can help you." The Karen started to respond when my grandma came back and said, "I'm done now, let's go." We started walking off, which the Karen didn't like, and shouted, "Get back here and help me now." Grandma stopped and looked at the Karen saying, "What's going on?" "This is my granddaughter and we're leaving now." The Karen responds, "It's because I'm Chinese, isn't it?" My grandma said, "She doesn't work here, we're leaving now." The Karen response was, "BS, I saw her helping you, she works here." Then my grandma snapped and said, "Listen here, you mother effing bleep, 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 bleep," bunch of expletives. "Which makes you think she works here? Is the black leather jacket, the green tank top, or the jean shorts? How stupid can you bleeping be? Find another employee who's wearing that and I'll buy your bleeping groceries. But if you can't, then get the bleep out of here and leave us the bleep alone." The Karen went quiet, and I thought for a moment that I was about to break up a fight, and I had never heard my grandma use language like that before. Just then, an actual employee came in sight, and my grandma waved him down and told him that this Karen needed help, and then told the Karen, "Here's an employee who can help you. Now leave us the bleep alone," and we started to walk off. Wasn't good enough for the Karen who had to get the last word in. She screamed, "No, I want her to do her job and help me now," which I thought was going to set my grandma off again. But we continued to walk off, and I heard an employee says, "Ma'am, she doesn't work here. Now, how may I help you?" That was the last we ever heard before our earshot and never heard about again. In the car, on the way home, Grandma suddenly turned bright red and told me, "What I said was unladylike, and I hope you never use those words or tell anyone I use them." I couldn't help but burst into laughter, telling a very embarrassed grandma, "Grandma, where did you learn such languages like that?" She never told me, but I was proud of her letting it all out. She still gets mad at me to this day when I use the word sucks, and she starts to lecture me on it. But I cut her in the moment, and I always remind her I've heard her say much worse, and she gets bright red and embarrassed. I love my grandma. And for our next story, an entitled mother attacked me and claimed that I assaulted her for not taking her kids to class. My ex-wife was a school teacher, and as such, I always volunteered to help around the school and help her and other teachers with some small things that they needed help with, like artistic bulletin boards and such. One day I took my wife to school and they had a staff meeting. I was working on replacing the artwork in the bulletin boards near the front office to match the current season and events before I go work. I even had my visitor badge on and everything. In come this crazy lady with her child. She walks up to me and says, "Here, please take him to the cafeteria. I am in a hurry." For context, you should know in my country, unless it's your job, you can get into a lot of trouble if I were to agree. I told the lady that I don't work here and you will have to take him in yourself while pointing to my visitor badge, which she 100% ignored. She proceeded to say, "You would take my child and escort him because I pay your salary." I smiled and politely again said, "I do not work here. I turn to continue working on the bulletin board. She grabs me, turns me around, and my visitor badge hit her square in the eye. She screamed and yelled and accused me of assaulting her. At the noise, the staff who was finishing their meeting came out, and my ex-wife and the principal came towards us to know what was happening. At this point, the Karen was already on the phone with the police accusing me of assaulting her. I explained the situation to my ex and to the principal, and I asked them to prepare the camera footage for the police when they arrive. The Karen is now screaming at the principal and demands I get fired. The principal keeps explaining that I don't work here and that I'm a volunteer who's married to one of the teachers, but she won't have it. The police arrive and takes our statement. The staff shows them the video, and it was clearly her fault. They asked me if I want to press charges, and of course I had to say yes. She was then taken away in handcuffs, kicking and screaming. She hit one of the officers in the process, which added to her charges. She ended up with 6 months in prison and 500 hours of community service. For our last story today is titled, I Don't Work for You Specifically. A couple years back, I worked for a very large resort-like place. It was where some very wealthy people had vacation homes. This place was huge, and it was basically its own town, and I happened to be a small subsection within the largest department. Now, it's important to note that the uniforms in my small town were completely different from the vast majority of people in this department because we are very specialized. We wore blue shirts and gray pants. Most of the rest of the department wore green shirts with khaki pants. Actually, I am fairly certain that we were the only team other than the on-site EMTs who had blue uniforms. It was a big place with lots of employees, so everyone in the public-facing job were essentially color-coded. Anyways, it was literally my second to last day on the job, and I had to go to the main office department because that's where they kept things where we didn't need all the time. Space was extremely limited in our office. I run inside and pick up a box of what we needed and headed back out to my vehicle. A lady wearing a green shirt walks up to me, and since I tried to be a decent person, I smiled and said hello. The lady looks at me and says, "Oh, perfect. I need help with a whole bunch of things over the banquet hall." Me, very clearly holding a heavy box which is labeled for my team, I'm on a tight schedule, sorry. The lady says, "That can wait. I need help now." I responded, "I'm really sorry, but I need to get this too." "I don't care. You need to help me." At this point, I was over it. Not to be rude, but you aren't my supervisor, and my actual supervisor will tear me a new one if I don't go about to the office right now. "I'm going to tell the head department about this," the young lady screamed. Me, over my shoulder, as I walked away, I said, "Go ahead, he's in the office right now. I just said hi to him." Anyways, I headed over to my office and pretty much forgot the interaction because we were slammed that day and it was nonstop until we closed. The next day was my last day on the job, so I wasn't surprised to see the head department show up when my shift was almost over. He was a really good guy and one of the best upper management types I've ever met, and really made an effort to get to know everyone on his department. My supervisor and I greeted him and we chatted while I finished up my cleaning station. The department head said to me, suddenly in a very grave, "I got a very concerning report about you yesterday." Me and the supervisor were dumbfounded. The department head went on to say, "Apparently, you refused to give assistance to a lady when she asked for it." Me? "Oh yeah, I was bringing supplies from the storage back here and didn't have time. She was kind of rude." The department head grinned widely at his joke and said, "Well, in that case, I'm afraid that I have to let you go if you don't apologize to her." Me responded with a big smile and said, "I'm terribly sorry it has to end this way, department head, but I must stick to my principles." He laughed and shook my hand and told me that I could always count on him for a good reference, while my supervisor was laughing in the background. It wasn't the perfect job, but it's one of the better ones, and I'll always be a little sad I had to move away. But at least it ended with a pretty good chuckle. Anyways, that's all of our stories today. Be sure to check out all the other stories on our channel for a good laugh. Thank you for subscribing and smashing that notification bell. I'll see you guys next time.